The museum held a sword older than the Galactic Council. The human said, "That's from my graduation." Part 1. The Grand Museum of Galactic History was the most famous building in the entire galaxy. It sat on Station Velorith, a massive space station that floated between 3 different star systems. Every species in the Galactic Council had contributed something to this museum. Ancient weapons, old books, strange machines, beautiful art. Millions of visitors came every year to see the wonders inside. Ambassador Kira Dawson walked through the halls with a group of other diplomats. She was 34 years old, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for only 2 years. In council terms, that made her almost invisible. Humanity had joined the council just 60 years ago. Most species have been members for thousands of years. They looked at humans the way adults look at small children. The group's guide was a tall, insect-like being named Threxival. He had 6 legs, 4 arms, and large compound eyes that reflected the blue lights of the museum. He was the head curator, and he was very proud of his collection. "This section contains the oldest weapons in our collection," Threxival said. His voice was clicking and buzzing, but the translator in Kira's ear turned it into clear English. "Some of these items are over 12,000 standard cycles old." Kira looked at the weapons behind the glass cases. There were energy guns that still glowed with faint power, crystal blades that hummed when you got close, metal staffs covered in strange symbols. Each one had a small sign explaining where it came from and how old it was. The other diplomats in the group seemed very impressed. The Valari ambassador was a floating cloud of purple gas. It kept drifting toward the displays and making sounds of wonder. The Drothian ambassador was a large reptile covered in gray scales. He kept nodding his massive head and asking questions about the weapons. Kira stayed quiet. She had learned that staying quiet was usually the best choice for a human ambassador. Talk too much, and the older species would laugh at you. Ask too many questions, and they would treat you like a fool. So she watched and listened and kept her thoughts to herself. Threxival led them to the center of the weapons hall. Here, in a special case made of clear crystal, was a single sword. It was not as fancy as the other weapons. No glowing lights, no humming sounds. Just a simple blade made of dark metal with a handle wrapped in old leather. "This is the pride of our collection," Threxival announced. "The oldest weapon we have ever found. Our scientists have dated it to approximately 14,000 standard cycles ago. That is 2,000 cycles before the Galactic Council was even formed." The other diplomats gathered around the case. They made impressed sounds and asked questions about how it was made and where it was found. Kira did not move. She was staring at the sword with wide eyes. Her heart was beating very fast. Her hands were shaking slightly. She knew that sword. She knew it very well. "The metal is a mystery," Threxival continued. "We have never seen this type of alloy before. The craftsmanship is incredible. Whoever made this sword was far more advanced than any civilization we know of from that time period." Kira stepped closer to the case. She leaned in and looked at the handle of the sword. Specifically, she looked at the pommel, the round part at the very end of the handle. There, carved into the metal, were 3 small letters. Cam D. Kira Marie Dawson, her initials. "Her sword." "Curator," Kira said. Her voice was calm, but inside she was screaming. "Where did you find this weapon?" Threxival turned to look at her. His compound eyes showed something like surprise. Humans did not usually ask questions during these tours. "It was discovered on a dead moon in the Outer Territories, Ambassador. A place with no life, no history. The sword was in an underground chamber that had been sealed for thousands of years." "Was there anything else in the chamber?" "A few other items. A metal plate with some markings we could not translate. Some tools that had turned to dust. Nothing important. Threxivol tilted his head. Why do you ask? Kira straightened up. She looked at the curator, then at the other diplomats, then back at the sword. She knew what she was about to say would cause problems. Big problems. But she could not stay silent. That was her sword. She had carried it for 12 years. She had trained with it, fought with it, bled with it. I asked because that sword belongs to me, Kira said. Those letters on the handle are my initials. I received that sword at my graduation from the United Earth Naval Academy. The museum hall went completely silent. Every diplomat was staring at her. Threxivol's mandibles had stopped moving. Even the floating Valari ambassador had gone still. Ambassador Dawson, Threxivol said slowly, that sword is 14,000 cycles old. Your entire species has only existed for a fraction of that time. What you're saying is impossible. I know what I'm saying sounds crazy, Kira replied. But I know my own sword. I know my own initials. Something is very wrong here, and I want to know what it is. The Dorothian ambassador let out a low growling sound. The human is either lying or insane. This is an insult to the museum and to the council. I am neither lying nor insane, Kira said firmly. I am telling you what I see. That sword was made on Earth, in a city called Denver, in a facility that has been making ceremonial blades for over 200 years. I can prove it. Threxivol made a strange clicking sound that might have been a laugh. Prove it? How can you possibly prove such a ridiculous claim? There is a hidden compartment in the handle. Inside that compartment is a data chip. That chip contains my graduation records, my service file, and my DNS signature. The compartment can only be opened by someone with my genetic code. The silence stretched out. Kira could feel the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on her. She knew she was taking a huge risk. If she was wrong, her career was over. If she was right, everything the galaxy believed about humanity would change. Threxivol finally spoke. This is a serious accusation, Ambassador. If you are wrong, there will be consequences. I understand, Kira said. But I am not wrong. That is my sword. And I want to know how it ended up in your museum, 14,000 years before I was born. She looked at the blade one more time. The dark metal gleamed under the museum lights. Somewhere in that ancient weapon were the answers to questions she had not even known to ask. The galaxy was about to get very complicated. The museum held a sword older than the Galactic Council. The human said, That's from my graduation, part 4, 2 weeks past. Kira spent every hour studying the information Helen had given her. She brought in scientists from Earth, historians, experts in ancient civilizations. They worked in secret rooms inside the embassy, analyzing data and verifying facts. What they found was stunning. 50-3,000 years ago, humans had built an empire that stretched across 1,000 star systems. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in days. They had technology that made the Council look primitive. They had fought wars against enemies so terrible that even their names had been erased from history. And then, somehow, they had lost it all. The empire fell. The technology was destroyed. The survivors found themselves back on Earth with no memory of what they had been. They started over, building farms and villages, and eventually new civilizations. But the stars faded from their memory like a dream forgotten upon waking. The evidence was clear. Cities found beneath Antarctic ice, preserved by the cold. Ships discovered at the bottom of the deepest oceans, their metal still strong after thousands of years. Cave paintings showing humans in strange suits, standing on worlds with multiple moons. Independent scientists confirmed each discovery. The data was real. Human history was not 6,000 years old. It was 50,000 years old. And for most of that time, humans had been among the most powerful species in existence. Kira shared this information with no one outside her team. She knew she had to present it at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way. The council was preparing to vote on the expansion restrictions in 3 weeks. If she moved too early, they would dismiss her evidence. If she moved too late, the vote would already be decided. She also had another problem. Someone was trying to kill her. The first assassination attempt came on a Tuesday morning. A drone armed with poison needles attacked her transport on the way to a diplomatic meeting. Daniel Perry shot it down before it could get close, but the message was clear. Someone did not want her to speak at the council. The second attempt came 4 days later. A bomb was found in the embassy's air system, hidden in a maintenance shaft that had not been checked in months. Daniel's team discovered it with only minutes to spare. The explosive would have killed everyone in the building. The third attempt was the most dangerous. A member of Kira's own staff, a young man named Craig Ellis, who had worked at the embassy for 3 years, tried to poison her dinner. Kira noticed the strange smell of her soup and refused to eat it. Tests showed it contained enough toxin to kill 100 people. Craig was arrested and questioned, but he refused to talk. He seemed almost proud of what he had done. The only thing he said was that humanity needed to learn its place. Someone is very scared of what you know, Daniel told Kira after the third attempt. They're not even being careful anymore. They just want you dead before you can speak. Then I need to speak soon, Kira replied, before they find a way to succeed. She sent a formal request to High Arbiter Morvex, asking for time to address the full council before the expansion vote. At first, he refused. The schedule was too full. There was no time for additional speeches. Then Kira sent him a sample of the evidence she had gathered, just enough to make him curious, just enough to make him wonder. The next day, her request was approved. She would speak to the council in 5 days. The preparations were intense. Kira practiced her speech 100 times. She reviewed the evidence until she could recite every fact from memory. She worked with her scientists to create holographic displays that would show the ancient human cities and ships in perfect detail. She also kept her sword close at all times. The blade that had traveled through time to reach her. The blade that could cut through anything in the galaxy. She did not know if she would need to use it, but she wanted it nearby just in case. The night before her speech, she was in her office reviewing her notes when the lights suddenly went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red. Kira grabbed her sword and moved to the wall, where she would be harder to spot. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps, too heavy to be human. The door exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris came a massive figure in black armor. It was at least 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and a helmet that hid its face. In its hands was some kind of energy weapon that glowed with deadly light. "Ambassador Dawson," the figure said in a deep, mechanical voice. "You have been judged a threat to galactic stability. Your life is forfeit." Kira did not run. She did not hide. She raised her sword and stepped forward into the light. "You want to kill me?" she said. "Then come and try." The figure laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the damaged room. "A primitive blade against armor designed to resist plasma weapons? You are brave, human. But you are also foolish." It raised its weapon and fired. Kira moved faster than she had ever moved before. She did not know where the speed came from. Maybe it was training. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was something else entirely. But she twisted to the side, just as the energy blast passed through the space where she had been standing. She did not stop to think. She charged forward, sword raised, and swung at the attacker's arm. The blade went through the armor like it was made of paper. The figure screamed as its arm fell to the floor, weapon still clutched in its severed hand. Blue blood sprayed across the walls. The attacker stumbled backward, staring at the wound in shock. "Impossible," it gasped. That armor was rated to survive direct hits from ship-mounted guns. No blade could cut through it. "This is not just any blade," Kira said. She raised the sword again. "Now tell me who sent you, or I take the other arm." The attacker did not answer. Instead, it pressed something on its remaining wrist. A moment later, it vanished in a flash of light, teleporting away to somewhere Kira could not follow. Daniel and his security team arrived seconds later. They found Kira standing in her ruined office, covered in alien blood, holding a sword that glowed faintly in the emergency lights. "Ambassador," Daniel said carefully, "are you all right?" "I'm fine." Kira looked down at her blade. Helen had told her it could cut through anything. Now she believed it. "Someone really doesn't want me to speak tomorrow. Do you still want to go through with it?" Kira thought about the attacker's words. She had been judged a threat to galactic stability. Someone on the council, maybe several someones, had decided that humanity needed to be stopped. They were willing to kill to make that happen. She had never been more certain of anything in her life. "Yes," she said. "Tomorrow I tell the galaxy the truth. And whoever is trying to stop me can watch while I do it." She wiped the alien blood from her sword and began preparing for the most important speech of her life. The museum held a sword older than the Galactic Council. The human said, "That's from my graduation, Part 2. The council chamber was the largest room Kira had ever seen. It was shaped like a giant bowl, with seats rising up on all sides. Each seat belonged to a different species. There were hundreds of them, and today every single seat was filled. Floating cameras drifted through the air, sending images to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Kira sat alone at the small human delegation table. It was placed near the bottom of the chamber, in a spot that showed exactly how unimportant humanity was considered. She kept her back straight and her face calm. Inside, her stomach was twisted into knots. High Arbiter Morvax sat at the very top of the chamber, on a raised platform that let him look down on everyone else. He was tall and thin, with silver skin and forearms. His job was to keep order in the council and to judge disputes between species. Right now, he was looking at Kira like she was a bug that had crawled onto his dinner plate. "This emergency session has been called to address a claim made by the human ambassador," Morvax announced. His voice was deep and cold. "Ambassador Dawson states that an artifact in the Grand Museum of Galactic History, an artifact dated to 14,000 cycles ago, actually belongs to her. She claims it was made on Earth barely over 100 years ago." A wave of muttering swept through the chamber. Kira heard words like impossible and ridiculous and typical human arrogance in a dozen different languages. Morvax raised one of his hands, and the chamber fell silent. "Ambassador Dawson, you will explain yourself." Kira stood up. She had practiced this speech 100 times in her head, but now that the moment had come, her mouth felt dry. She took a deep breath and began. "High Arbiter, members of the council, I understand that my claim sounds impossible, but I ask you to consider the evidence before making a judgment." She pressed a button on her table, and a holographic image of the sword appeared in the center of the chamber. It slowly rotated so everyone could see it clearly. "This sword was given to me when I graduated from the United Earth Naval Academy 12 years ago. It was made in a facility on Earth that has been producing ceremonial weapons for centuries. The initials carved into the pommel, KMD, stand for Kira Marie Dawson. That is my name." The Drothian ambassador, whose name was Varth, let out a harsh laugh. "Names can be copied. Initials can be faked. This proves nothing." "You are correct," Kira said, "which is why I am not asking you to take my word for it. I am asking you to let me open the hidden compartment in the sword's handle. Inside that compartment is a data chip containing information that will prove my claim beyond any doubt." Curator Threxival, who had been called to the chamber as an expert witness, raised one of his arms. "High Arbiter, My team has examined that sword with every tool available to us. There is no hidden compartment. The human is either mistaken or lying. The compartment is shielded against standard scanning technology, Kira explained. It was designed to survive anything, including capture by enemy forces. The only way to open it is with a specific genetic signature. She paused. My genetic signature. The chamber erupted into noise again. Some species were shouting that this was a waste of time. Others were demanding that Kira be arrested for insulting the council. A few, mostly the younger species, were calling for the test to be allowed. Morvex brought his ceremonial staff down against the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap, and silence returned. Ambassador Dawson, he said slowly, you understand the consequences if you fail to prove your claim? I do, High Arbiter. You will be charged with contempt of the Council. You will be removed from your position. Your species may face sanctions for this embarrassment. Kira nodded. I understand. I accept those consequences if I am wrong. But I am not wrong. Morvex studied her for a long moment. His silver face showed no emotion, but something in his eyes suggested he was curious despite himself. Finally, he nodded. Very well. The sword will be brought to this chamber. Ambassador Dawson will be given the opportunity to open this alleged compartment. If she succeeds, we will examine the contents. If she fails, she will face the full weight of council justice. Guards were sent to the museum. The wait felt like forever. Kira sat at her table and tried not to think about what would happen if she was somehow wrong. What if her memory was playing tricks on her? What if someone had created a perfect copy of her sword? What if this was all some elaborate trap? No, she knew that sword. She had held it in her hands more times than she could count. She had felt its weight, traced her fingers over her initials, practiced combat forms until her arms ached. That sword was hers. There was no doubt in her mind. The guards returned carrying the crystal case. They placed it on a platform in the center of the chamber, then stepped back. Morvex gestured for Kira to approach. She walked to the platform. Every eye in the chamber was on her. Every camera was recording. If she failed now, it would be the most watched humiliation in galactic history. Kira reached into the case and picked up the sword. The moment her hand touched the handle, she felt a wave of recognition. This was her blade. She would have known it anywhere. She turned the sword so the pommel faced upward. With her thumb, she pressed a specific point on the metal, just above her carved initials. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she heard a soft click. A small section of the handle slid open, revealing a tiny compartment inside. Something small and shiny glinted under the chamber lights. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even Morvex had leaned forward in his seat. Kira reached into the compartment and pulled out a data chip no larger than her fingernail. She held it up for everyone to see. As I said, she announced, my sword, my compartment, my proof. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates were shouting. Cameras were swooping in for closer shots. And somewhere in the noise, Kira heard Threxaval making a sound of complete disbelief. Morvex restored order and called for the chip to be analyzed. Technicians took it to a secure station and began reading its contents. Kira watched as information filled the holographic displays, her graduation records, her service file, her DNA profile and biometric data, photographs of her receiving the sword from Admiral Patricia Cole at her graduation ceremony. And a date, June 15th, 2847, 112 years ago. By human reckoning, the data appears authentic, the lead technician announced. All records match existing databases. The DNA signature matches Ambassador Dawson's genetic profile exactly. Vorath, the Drothian ambassador, slammed his fist against his desk. This is impossible. Our scientists dated that sword to 14,000 cycles. Are you saying they were all wrong? I am saying that something very strange is happening here, Kira replied. I cannot explain how my sword ended up in a sealed chamber 14,000 years ago. But I know that it is my sword, and now so do you. She looked up at Morvex. I Arbiter. I came here to prove my claim, and I have done so. Now I want answers. Someone put my sword in that chamber. Someone wanted it to be found. I intend to find out who and why. Morvex was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than cold. Ambassador Dawson, you have presented evidence that challenges everything we thought we knew about your species. The Council will need time to investigate these claims further. He stood up, a gesture that made the entire chamber gasp. In the meantime, the sword will be returned to your custody. It appears, against all logic and reason, that it does belong to you. Kira picked up her sword and held it close. She had won this battle, but she knew the war was just beginning. Somewhere in the past, someone had planted this weapon for her to find. They had known she would be here, at this moment, asking these questions. They had planned all of this. The only question was why. The museum held a sword older than the Galactic Council. The human said, "That's from my graduation." Part 3, 3 days had passed since the council session. Kira had barely slept. She spent every waking hour in her office at the human embassy, going through the data chip again and again, looking for clues she might have missed. The chip contained more than just her records. There were files she had never seen before, hidden folders that had been locked until she opened the compartment. Information that made no sense and yet somehow felt true. Her security chief, a big man named Daniel Perry, had stationed guards outside her door. The galaxy was talking about nothing but the sword. Some species were angry. Some were scared. A few were sending death threats. Daniel was not taking any chances. Kira was reading a file about something called the Temporal Defense Initiative when her computer made a sound. Someone was requesting entry to her office. She checked the security camera and saw a woman standing in the hallway. The woman looked human. She was about 50 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore plain civilian clothes, nothing special. But there was something about the way she stood, the way she held herself. That made Kira's instincts start screaming warnings. Let her in, Kira told the computer. The door slid open, and the woman walked inside. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who had nothing to fear. Her eyes swept the room quickly, taking in every detail, before settling on Kira. Hello, Kira, the woman said. You've done well. Better than we hoped. Kira's hand moved toward the weapon on her desk. Who are you? How did you get past my security? Your security let me through because I know the right codes. Codes that will not be invented for another 300 years. The woman sat down in the chair across from Kira's desk. As for who I am, you already know. You're just afraid to believe it. Kira looked at the woman more closely. The shape of her face, the color of her eyes, the small scar on her left cheek from a childhood accident. That's impossible, Kira whispered. My mother died 15 years ago. Your mother died of a brain tumor in 2844. I was there. I held your hand while you cried. The woman who looked like Helen Dawson smiled sadly. But death is not always the end, Kira. Not when you have access to certain technologies. What technologies? What are you talking about? Time travel. The manipulation of temporal fields. The ability to step outside the normal flow of events and move forward or backward at will. Helen leaned forward. The data chip you found mentioned the Temporal Defense Initiative. That organization does not exist yet, not in your time. But it will. And I am one of its founding members. Kira's mind was spinning. This was insane. Time travel was impossible. Every scientist in the galaxy said so. And yet here was a woman who looked exactly like her dead mother, talking about the future as if she had been there. "The sword," Kira said slowly. "You put it in that chamber." "I did. 14,000 years ago, from your perspective. A few months ago, from mine." Helen reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a metal cylinder covered in glowing symbols. "This is what makes it possible. A temporal displacement unit. I can go anywhere, anywhen. Why? Why plant the sword? Why all of this?" Helen's smile faded. Her eyes became serious. "Because humanity is in danger, Kira. Not from war or disease, but from the Council itself. They are preparing to restrict human expansion. They want to confine us to a handful of systems, to limit our growth until we become too weak to resist them. Why would they do that? Because they are afraid of what we will become. Some of the older species have been watching humanity for a long time. They have run projections, made calculations, studied our potential, and what they see terrifies them." Helen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars glittered cold and distant. "In the future I come from, humanity has spread across the galaxy. We have become the most powerful species in existence. We have solved problems that the Council species cannot even understand. We have reached places they could never dream of reaching." That sounds like a good thing. It is. It is. But the Council species do not see it that way. They see a threat. They see a young species growing too fast, becoming too strong. And some of them have decided to stop us before we get that far. Kira thought about the diplomatic meetings she had attended. The subtle insults. The condescending smiles. The way older species talked about humanity like they were discussing a clever pet. She had always assumed it was simple arrogance. Now she was not so sure. "The sword," she said. It was a message. A way to start this conversation. It was more than that. The sword is a tool. Helen turned back to face her. The metal in that blade is not from your time. It was forged using techniques that will not be discovered for centuries. That metal can cut through anything. Energy shields. Hull plating. The protective barriers the Council uses to guard their most important secrets. You want me to use it as a weapon? Only if words fail. And I hope they will not. Helen walked back to the chair and sat down again. "I did not come here to start a war, Kira. I came here to prevent one. The Council is meeting soon to discuss new restrictions on human expansion. If those restrictions pass, the future I come from will never happen. Humanity will wither and die, trapped in a tiny corner of the galaxy, while other species take everything else. What do you want me to do?" Helen reached into her pocket again and pulled out a second device. This one was flat and rectangular, like a tablet computer. She placed it on Kira's desk. "This contains information. Real information, not guesses or theories. Records of human civilizations that existed on Earth before recorded history. Evidence that we have been to the stars before, in ages so ancient that we forgot we ever left. Proof that humanity is not a young species. We are one of the oldest species in this galaxy. We just forgot." Kira picked up the device. The screen lit up, showing files and folders and images she did not recognize. Cities buried under ice. Ships floating in the depths of the ocean. Carvings on cave walls that showed humans standing among the stars. This is real? Every bit of it. The Council thinks humans are children who need to be controlled. Show them that we are not. Show them that we have survived for longer than their civilizations have existed. Show them that we have faced extinction before and come back stronger every time. Kira stared at the device in her hands. If this information was real, it would change everything. Not just for the Council, but for humanity itself. Everything they thought they knew about their own history would have to be rewritten. Why me? She asked. Why not give this to someone more important? A president? A general? Someone with real power? Helen smiled again, and this time there was pride in her expression. Because you are exactly who we need. A young woman who does not back down. A soldier who became a diplomat. Someone who has already shown the galaxy that humans cannot be dismissed or ignored. She reached out and touched Kira's hand. You are my daughter, Kira, in every timeline and every version of history that has never changed. I know what you are capable of. Now it is time for you to find out. She stood up and walked toward the door. Wait, Kira said. How do I contact you? What if I have questions? Helen paused at the door. You will not need to contact me. I will be watching. And when the time comes, I will be there. She stepped through the door and was gone. Kira sat alone in her office, holding a sword from her own graduation and a tablet full of impossible history. The future was watching her. The past was depending on her dot. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity could really do. The museum held a sword older than the Galactic Council. The human said, That's from my graduation, Part 5. The council chamber was completely full. Every seat was taken. Every camera was running. Every species in the galaxy was watching. This was the most anticipated speech in council history, and everyone knew it. Kira walked to the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. She wore her formal ambassador uniform, and her sword hung at her side in a simple sheath. The blade that had traveled through time. The blade that had saved her life. The blade that was about to change everything. Don High Arbiter Morvex looked down at her from his raised seat. His silver face showed no emotion, but his eyes were curious. Ambassador Dawson, you have requested time to address the council before we vote on the expansion limitations. You may proceed. Kira took a deep breath. She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. Some were hostile. Some were curious. A few, mostly from younger species, seemed almost hopeful. Members of the council, she began, for 60 years, humanity has been told that we are newcomers to the galactic community. We have been told that we are young, inexperienced, and in need of guidance from older and wiser species. We have accepted these labels because we believed they were true. She paused, letting the words sink in. We were wrong. And so were you. The chamber rustled with surprised whispers. Kira pressed a button on her control pad, and holographic images began appearing throughout the room. Ancient cities, massive and beautiful, buried under ice and snow. Ships the size of mountains, resting on the ocean floor. Star charts showing human colonies spread across 1,000 systems. 53,000 years ago, humanity built an interstellar empire. We traveled further than any species had traveled before. We faced threats that would destroy most civilizations, and we survived. We created works of science and art that still exist today, hidden beneath our own world's surface. The images changed, showing evidence that her scientists had verified. Carbon dating results, material analyses, archaeological surveys. Everything carefully documented, everything peer-reviewed, everything true. This is not a guess or a theory. This is proven fact. Human history does not begin 6,000 years ago. It begins 50,000 years ago. For most of that time, we were one of the most advanced species in this galaxy. Voreth, the Drothian ambassador, slammed his fist against his desk. Lies. Human propaganda designed to fool the council. The evidence has been verified by scientists from 12 different species. Kira replied calmly, including 3 members of your own scientific academy, Ambassador Voreth. They confirmed every finding. Would you like me to display their reports? Voreth fell silent, his scales darkening with anger. Kira continued. You are right to wonder what happened to this ancient empire. The truth is, we do not fully know. Our records suggest a great war, fought against an enemy so powerful that even our advanced technology could not defeat them. Humanity was nearly destroyed. The survivors lost everything. Our ships, our cities, our knowledge, our memories. We started over on Earth, building from nothing, with no idea what we had once been. She walked toward the center of the chamber, her sword swinging gently at her hip. But we did not stay fallen. We climbed back. We rebuilt. We reached for the stars again. And now, 60 years after rejoining the galactic community, we stand before you as proof that humanity cannot be kept down. No matter how many times we fall, we rise again. That is what we are. That is what we have always been. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the hostile delegates had stopped making noise. I know that some of you fear what humanity will become. I have seen the intelligence reports. I know about the secret meetings and the plans to restrict our expansion. Kira's voice hardened. Last night, someone sent an assassin to kill me. An armored soldier with weapons designed to destroy ships. They told me I have been judged a threat to galactic stability. She drew her sword. The dark blade gleamed under the chamber lights, and several delegates gasped. This sword was given to me at my graduation. It was also planted 14,000 years in the past by humans from a future that some of you are trying to prevent. The metal in this blade can cut through anything, including council security barriers. It was sent to me as a tool, a weapon of last resort, in case words were not enough. She held the sword up for everyone to see. I do not want to use this sword against anyone. I want to use words. I want to use truth. I want to show you that humanity is not your enemy. We are not a threat to be contained. We are a partner to be welcomed. Kira lowered the sword but did not sheath it. The expansion vote you are about to take will determine the future of my species. If you vote to restrict us, you will be trying to stop something that cannot be stopped. We have been knocked down before. We have lost everything before. And we have come back, every single time, stronger than we were. She looked directly at High Arbiter Morvex. You cannot stop humanity by limiting our worlds. You cannot stop us by controlling our trade routes. You cannot stop us by sending assassins to kill our ambassadors. We have faced extinction and survived. We have lost our entire civilization and rebuilt it from nothing. Do you really think a few council restrictions will do what ancient wars and forgotten enemies could not? The silence stretched on. Kira waited. Finally, Morvex spoke. Ambassador Dawson, your evidence is impressive, and your words are bold. But the Council must still consider the safety of all species. How can we be sure that humanity will not become a threat to others, as it apparently was in the ancient past? Kira nodded. She had expected this question. You cannot be sure. Just as we cannot be sure that any species will not become a threat. But consider this. In the thousands of years since our ancient empire fell, we have never tried to conquer our neighbors. We have never started wars of expansion. We have never enslaved other species. Even when we had the power to do terrible things, we chose not to. She sheathed her sword. We are not asking for your trust. We know trust must be earned. We are asking for a chance to earn it. Do not judge us by what we might become. Judge us by what we have done. Judge us by how we have treated others since joining the Council. Judge us by the fact that even now, with proof of how powerful we once were, I am standing here asking for partnership instead of demanding surrender. The Valari ambassador, the floating cloud of purple gas, drifted forward. Its voice was soft and musical. The human speaks well, and her evidence is convincing. Perhaps we have been too quick to judge this young species. Other voices began joining in. Some agreed with the Valari. Some still supported restrictions. The chamber filled with debate. Morvex raised his hand for silence. When the room was quiet again, he looked down at Kira. Ambassador Dawson, you have given this council much to consider. The vote on expansion restrictions will be postponed until your evidence can be fully reviewed. In the meantime, I would like to meet with you privately to discuss the future of human-council relations. He stood up, and the entire chamber gasped again. The High Arbiter never stood for anyone. Humanity has finally introduced itself, Morvex said. The galaxy will never be quite the same. Kira allowed herself a small smile. She had done it. Not with her sword, but with her words. With the truth dawned as she walked out of the chamber, she passed by a tall woman with gray hair standing in the back. No one else seemed to notice her, but Kira saw her mother smile and nod. Just once, before disappearing into the crowd. The future was safe. Humanity would continue to rise. And somewhere across time, people were watching and celebrating what she had done today. Kira touched the handle of her sword one last time. Then she walked forward to meet whatever came next. The end.